Yes.
Thank you.
Well, you need to find a way, because I'll look at it.
Okay, I can begin.
Yeah.
Are you using the
Without
elbow?
holding yourself. Yeah.
Can I just take a picture? Grandma, if I can just make sure this is. Depending on what you're doing, let me know and I can switch it, but it's all in.
That's what it is.
Well, there's a couple of.
Got it. Just the ones.
We were able to fix the curves.
I'm just looking at the other one.
All right, may I have this mark for identification?
Yes.
It's okay, I can.
Yeah, no.
No objection to the disc? Okay.
Right.
And may I just have this disc mark for ID as well?
Yes.
I'm prepared to proceed, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. We can bring the jury in, please. Will counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Judge.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. We continue with the state's case.
Good morning, Mr. Gumienny.
Good morning.
Mr. Gumienny, where we left off yesterday, you had given the seats that were in your Tacoma Ford Focus seats to Sergeant Al Bisson. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
I want to show you some photographs if I could. Judge, I have a disc here which has been pre-marked for identification as State's Exhibit 126. I provided a copy to Attorney Schoenhorn, and I believe he does not have an objection, so I would formally move this disc into evidence.
That's correct.
Thank you. 126 admitted as full, State's 126.
Yes, sir. Judge, within states 126, there's a folder entitled Toyota Tacoma. And there's a photograph entitled 335 Tacoma seats. Mr. Gumienny, do you see what's shown in that particular image?
Yes,
And can you just tell the jury what's shown in this image?
those are those two seats that I removed from my Toyota Tacoma.
And can you indicate for the jury there appear to be two seats within the image? Can you indicate for the jury which one was the driver's seat and which one was the passenger seat? If you have to stand up, that's fine.
Do you have pictures from a different angle?
We can get them for you, yes, but not currently.
No. I mean, the only way I could tell,
Well, I'm going to object as non-responsive, Your Honor.
Well, the last comment from the state was, we can get them, but right now we cannot get those other photos. And the witness was about to say the only way he could tell, and it may be that the witness was about to say the only way he could tell is if there's another angle or another photo showing a different angle. So the objection is overruled.
You can finish your answer, Mr. Gumienny.
I could tell by where the seatbelt attachment is on which side of the seat. They're always on the center console side. So if you have a picture from a little different angle,
All right, we'll see what we can do. Now, your recollection, though, was that you believe you took the cover off the driver's seat, is that
Yes.
correct? And if we could just X out of this photo and pull up the other photograph within this folder. Mr. Gumienny, what is that?
that looks like my 2001 Tacoma.
And how do you know it's your 2001 Tacoma?
The color, the type of the truck, and the most noticeable thing, it's the snowplow mount.
And I'm just going to ask if you could stand up and just show the jury the snowplow mount that you speak of.
It's this and then the wire harness.
Okay, so I just want the record to reflect, Mr. Gumienny, you just, with your left index finger, pointed to an area just below the license plate in the photograph, and your finger went from right to left along the center of the photograph underneath. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you pointed out an additional item above that particular item to the right of the license plate in this photo. What is that?
That's a wiring harness that, that controls the plow.
Did your Toyota Tacoma also have chrome running boards?
Yes.
And where were they located on the vehicle?
Underneath the driver and passenger side doors.
Mr. Gumienny, you mentioned yesterday on direct examination that you went with Mr. Dulos to 80 Mountain Spring Road as he was driving your Tacoma there. Is that correct?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that you don't recall the exact date of that?
Yes.
How many times did you do that with Mr. Dulos?
Just one.
Judge, I'm going to ask that we pull up in the photograph, or in the folder entitled States Exhibit 81. There's a photograph, 77 Mountain Spring Road, surveillance, 5/23/19. And within there is a clip entitled 23/4:57 p.m. Just going to ask if we can play that. And Mr. Gumienny, can you look at the clip behind you? Mr. Gumienny, did you recognize any of the vehicles in that clip?
Yes, this is my Tacoma, and Dulos is Ford Raptor.
And who was driving the Tacoma in this footage?
Fotis Dulos.
And who was driving the Raptor?
I did.
And where did the two of you go?
To 80 Mountain Spring Road.
And just so the record is clear, both vehicles make a left off of Mountain Spring Road into the driveway of 80 Mountain Spring Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe you indicated that Mr. Dulos backed in to 80 Mountain Spring Road. Is that?
He pulled in and turned around, so the truck was ready to leave.
How long were you at 80 Mountain Spring Road for with Mr. Dulos during that trip?
We left the truck and we went back, I believe.
And Judge, I should have indicated this, but the record should reflect that the timestamp on this video is a day and 10 minutes fast. So this is actually May 23rd, 2019 at 4:57 p.m. and 34 seconds.
Thank you.
So I'd like to play another clip for you if I could. And just for the record, the clip is in that same folder entitled 23:5:01 p.m. 77 MSR. I'm just going to ask that you watch that clip.
Yes, that looks like.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, if the record could reflect that the actual time is May 23rd, 2019 at 5 o'clock p.m. and 45 seconds. Mr. Gumienny, did you recognize any vehicles in that clip?
Yes, the black Ford Raptor.
And would this have been after the Tacoma was dropped off?
Yes,
Do you recall who was driving the Raptor at this point?
I don't.
If I could have a state's exhibit. For the record, I'm holding State's Exhibit 88, which has already been admitted into evidence.
If I can, you're not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, if I could just have one moment.
Yes.
Mr. Gumienny, were you driving your Toyota Tacoma on the morning of May 24th, 2019?
No,
As far as you knew, where was your Toyota Tacoma located?
at 80 Mountain Spring Road.
Now, I want you to just look at this photograph behind you. Does this vehicle appear to be consistent with your Toyota Tacoma?
Yes, the crumbing boards look like the rims.
And there appears to be an object in the bed of the vehicle. Did you, when you dropped your Toyota Tacoma off at 4 Jefferson Crossing. In other words, the last time you had possessed it, prior to taking it back on the 24th. Was there anything in the bed of your vehicle?
Other than like bungee cords and tie-down straps that I use for tie-down dirt bike. They
So
should not be with me.
Nothing that resembled this object here, correct?
No.
Okay, and just for the record, I'm pointing to an object in the bed of the vehicle at this point. Turning 88 to just if you show me how to do it, I can.
If you can go to.
Okay, you can leave it off because I'm going to use it again.
Yep, it blocks the,
Oh,
it blocks the view. So you want to go back to the computer, which is 4.
got it.
Okay. 2.
Mr. Gumienny, you also indicated that you stopped at a gas station on May 24th, 2019, correct?
Yes.
Which gas station did you stop at?
I believe the name it's Babu Mobile or something like that. It's across the street from Yukon.
What vehicle were you driving when you stopped at the gas station?
Ford Raptor
And how did you pay for the gas?
with American Express.
Whose American Express card?
It belonged to Ford Group, but it was under my name.
And so, because this was a business expense, did you hang on to the receipt?
Yes.
Last file. And I'm displaying within States Exhibit 126, there is a image entitled Babu Mobile Receipt 52419. Mr. Gumienny, is this a photograph of the receipt that you got from the mobile gas station on May 24th, 2019?
Yes.
And could you indicate for the jury how many gallons were purchased?
It looks like 22.6.
And is that more gallons than the Toyota Tacoma can take?
Yes, Toyota Tacoma dry empty tank won't take more than 17 gallons, if I'm not mistaken.
You testified yesterday on direct examination that after getting to 4 Jefferson Crossing in the afternoon on the 24th, you went to 585 Deer Cliff to pick up a 2x10 plank for your dirt bike before you went to 80 Mountain. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I have here what has been pre-marked for identification as States Exhibit 125. This is a still shot from residential surveillance footage, Your Honor. I showed it to Attorney Sean Morgan. No objection?
No objection.
I move it in, Your Honor.
States 125 admitted as full.
Mr. Gumienny, I'm just going to ask that you look at this photograph. The timestamp indicates May 25th, 2019 at 5:08 and 54 seconds p.m. The actual time is May 24th, 2019 at 4:58 and 54 seconds p.m. And I'm just going to ask if you can look at this still shot and tell us what you see in the still shot with respect to any vehicles.
It looks like a Ford Raptor that I was driving that day with, looks like a 2x10 sticking out of back cargo area.
And Judge, because of the small nature of this photograph, is it all right if I publish this to the jury
Yes.
by just passing it around?
Yes.
And Just for the record, Mr. Gumienny, can you point out where the object is, the plank?
It's right on the back of the truck.
Thank you, sir. Returning 125, sir. And can you just tell us again why you took the plank to 80 Mountain Spring Road?
I took the plank because I just wanted to load the door bike on the back of try to load the door bike on the back of the Raptor. And as I was leaving 585 Deercliff, I thought of stopping by 80 Mountain Spring to see if the key is in my truck or Dulos might be there.
Going to show some additional residential surveillance footage at this time. Within States Exhibit 126, there's a folder entitled States Exhibit 81. And we're going to open the folder entitled 77 Mountain Spring Road Surveillance Footage 5/24/19. And we're going to begin with the first clip, which is 24/16:58 p.m. I'm going to ask that you turn around and just watch this clip. Mr. Gumienny, what was shown in that clip?
It looks like me driving the Raptor to 80 Mountain Spring Road.
And approximately how long were you at 80 Mountain Spring Road the first time when you walked around the property with Mr. Dulos?
Can't recall it exactly. I want to say around 10 minutes.
And as you were leaving, did Mr. Dulos and the defendant leave also?
I'm assuming. I don't remember seeing them in the mirror following me on the road.
And do you know what vehicles they were driving?
There was white Jeep Cherokee and black Suburban.
I'm just going to play another clip. The next clip is entitled 24/17:02 p.m. We can pause it there. We pause the video, Your Honor, at 19 seconds. Mr. Gumienny, can you just indicate to the jury what we just saw?
It looks like it's me in the Raptor leaving 80 Mountain Spring Road.
Okay, if we can continue to play the clip. We can pause it there. Mr. Gumienny, I believe you indicated that there was a white Cherokee and a black Suburban at 80 Mountain, is that correct?
Yes.
Do those appear to be depicted in this particular clip that we've now paused at
Yes.
40 seconds?
Yes.
Okay, we can keep playing. Incidentally, in that particular clip, the vehicles are heading left on the screen, is that correct?
Yes,
And is that headed back towards 4 Jefferson Crossing and 585 Deer Cliff Road?
that's correct.
I want to open up another folder if I could. And if we can open up the folder entitled Photos of 80 Mountain Spring Road, and specifically the second file, the 80 Mountain Spring Road aerial view. Mr. Gumienny, I'm just going to ask that you look at this aerial view photograph and tell me if you recognize the area.
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the jury what area this is?
Property to the right of the main road, it's 18 Mountain Spring Road. And
sorry, go ahead.
the property to the left, it's 77 Mountain Spring Road.
And can you just stand up and indicate to the jury, when you first encountered Mr. Dulos and the defendant on this property on May 24th, 2019, where you drove and where everybody was? Can you just stand up and show them?
So I came down this road and I drove in here and I worked through someplace around here.
Okay, so I just want the record to reflect that your right index
I'm
finger.
sorry, could Mr. McGinnis stand so I'm able to see? He's blocking my view, please. Thank you.
I just want the record to reflect that your right index finger went down on the photograph on 80 Mountain Spring Road until you reached the driveway of 80 Mountain Spring Road, and then you took your index finger and you brought it up the driveway. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you just point out to the jury where the vehicles were parked in this particular photograph?
The Toyota Tacoma was parked somewhere around here.
And you're indicating with your right pinky finger the area located behind the house that appears to be a driveway, is that correct?
Yes.
Approximately how far from the road is this particular area that you just pointed to?
Don't know, I want to say 300 feet.
If you're standing on the road, can you see the back of the house?
The back of the garages, you mean?
Yeah, the back of the garages. If you're standing in front of 80 Mountain Spring Road, can you see the back? You cannot, correct?
No.
Thank you, sir. And just going to pull up the next photograph in that folder entitled 80 Mountain Spring Road Garage View. Mr. Gumienny, could you just indicate for the jury while you're standing there, perhaps where the vehicles were parked if they're shown in this photograph, and where Mr. Dulos and the defendant were standing when you first arrived?
So the Toyota Tacoma was parked somewhere in here.
And you're making a circular motion with your right pinky finger in the bottom right-hand corner of the photograph, correct?
Yes. The Raptor was parked somewhere in here.
You're making a circular motion in the right center of the photograph, is that correct?
Yes.
At the bottom? Okay.
I believe the Chevy Suburban was parked here and then the Jeep was.
Okay, and so you're indicating that the Chevy Suburban was parked in front of the center bay of the garage, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and where was the Jeep parked?
It was kind of like turning behind the Tacoma.
Thank you, sir. You can have a seat. Now, I believe you indicated that at some point you and Mr. Dulos returned to 80 Mountain Spring Road, is that correct?
Yes.
Which vehicle did you return in?
And the Raptor.
Okay, I'm just going to play some additional residential surveillance footage. From folder states 81, subfolder 52419. And I think that's it. Playing 17:14 PM. So again, I've neglected to do this a couple times, but again, the timestamp is a day and 10 minutes fast. Mr. Gumienny, what was shown in that particular clip?
It looks like me and Dulos driving back to 8 Mountain Spring Road.
And I believe you indicated that this is when you were told by Mr. Dulos that the defendant had the keys to your Tacoma, correct?
Yes,
And you indicated that the defendant returned to 80 Mountain Spring Road.
correct.
Do you recall which vehicle she returned in?
Can you repeat that?
Do you recall which vehicle she returned in?
Your Honor, this has all been asked and answered yesterday.
What's foundational for the clip that I'm going to play, Judge?
Well, quite frankly, the routes taken between 4 Jefferson Crossing, 80 Mountain Spring Road, 585 Deerfield are not easy to remember. So even if those routes were mentioned yesterday, the court is going to allow it.
So my question was, do you recall which vehicle she arrived in?
I don't.
Just going to play the next clip, which is a clip entitled 77 MSR 52419, 523 50 seconds PM through 524 and 13 seconds PM. Mr. Gumienny, did you recognize any vehicles in that clip?
Yes, it looks like black Suburban
How do you know that?
that belongs to Dulos. I recognize the Turo box on top of the car.
Does that refresh your memory at all as to what vehicle she arrived in?
It must be that, but I didn't see her driving it.
And I'm just going to play a clip now. All three of you then left the property again, is that correct?
Yes.
And this is 77 MSR 52419, 53700 through 53815. Mr. Gumienny, can you just tell us what was shown in that clip?
It looks like the black Suburban left the property, followed by red Tacoma, and Black Raptor.
Who was driving the Tacoma at this point?
I did.
You also testified yesterday that at a certain point you loaded your dirt bike onto the bed of your Tacoma, is that correct?
Yes.
And where did you do that?
At 585 Deercliff.
Yeah, it must be 20. Opening a folder entitled States Exhibit 123. This is a still shot entitled 5/24/19 at 17:57:39. And if we could just zoom towards the vehicle. Mr. Gumienny, I'm going to ask that you stand up. Do you recognize the vehicle in this still shot?
Yes.
And can you just tell the jury whose vehicle this is?
It looks like my Toyota Tacoma.
And do you recognize anything in the bed of the Tacoma?
The dirt bike and the 2x10.
And did the dirt bike take up a substantial amount of room in the bed of your vehicle?
Yes.
Did you know that this surveillance footage existed?
No.
You could have a seat, Mr. Gumienny. And if I could just have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I have an exhibit marked for identification?
Yes.
Showing Attorney Schoenhorn was from pre-marked for identification as States Exhibit 127. I think this can come in absent objection. Your Honor, states 127.
States 127 admitted as full.
Mr. Gumienny, do you recall being asked questions in August of 2019 about a bicycle that Mr. Dulos owned?
Yes.
And do you recall being shown photographs of the garage at 4 Jefferson Crossing that were taken after May 24th, 2019?
I believe so, yes.
Just going to hand you what's been entered into evidence as States Exhibit 127 and ask that you just familiarize yourself with that. Where would you had mentioned that Mr. Dulos had an older French model bicycle, correct?
Yes.
Where would he ordinarily keep that bicycle?
I remember it was hanging on one of the hooks in the garage. I'm not sure which one it was.
Do you see it in this photo?
Could it be the one up on the top?
Do you remember being shown this photograph previously and indicating it was not in the photo?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You've previously been shown that photograph by police, correct?
Yes.
And did you tell them that the bicycle, the French model bicycle, was not in that particular photograph?
Yes.
Just going to publish this. Yeah, power's on. You know, Judge, I'm not going to belabor this point. I have nothing further.
I'll fix it. Did I freak? No.
Going to show an order.
Mr. Gumienny, let's begin with what was talked about yesterday. You were given in December of this past year, so like a month and a half ago, written immunity from prosecution, correct?
Yes,
And this was something that was negotiated between you, your lawyer, and the current state's attorney, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
You were involved in the decision to give you immunity, correct?
Yes,
You understand that immunity means you can't be prosecuted for anything that you did which might have been a crime, correct?
yes,
And it was signed, this Exhibit 124, which was entered yesterday, was signed by the state's attorney for this judicial district, correct?
yes,
But you also were under the understanding that there was, as it says here, a verbal, oral immunity that was given to you by the former state's attorney, correct?
yes,
And it says right here that your lawyer, that's Lindy Urzo, correct? Right?
correct.
Informed the state's attorney's office of his belief that Pawel Gumienny had relied on representations made on or about June 2019 by Richard Colangelo Jr., then state's attorney for the Judicial District of Stamford, Norwalk, that Pawel Gumienny may not be charged with the crime of hindering prosecution if he cooperated with the investigation and prosecution of others in connection with the disappearance, etc., of Jennifer Dulos, correct?
Correct.
And that was your understanding when you were talking to the police in June of 2019, correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. What I just read to you was your understanding back in June of 2019, correct?
Well, I'm going to object, Your Honor. I think we need a tighter time frame than just June of 2019.
It's all it says is June 2019. How can it be more time-specific than that?
Well, the question that would appear to be the most clear is, at the time you entered into the, or were told that you would be granted immunity, what was your understanding? That would appear to be the clearer question, but you may ask your question again, Attorney Troconis.
Sure. I just read you what was in this agreement issued by the state's attorney, correct?
Correct.
And was it that your understanding when you were talking to the police back in June of 2019?
Yeah, it was just not written down. So when I spoke with my attorney, he told me it's a verbal agreement. It's not nothing
Nothing in writing.
in writing. So it could be,
But you were told that that would count. It's verbal, though, right?
yes.
When you yesterday testified about comments that you recall having, hearing from my client, Michelle Troconis, one after the disappearance and one before, the first time you mentioned that to the state's attorney's office was in January of 2024, correct?
Correct.
That was after the written grant of immunity had been given to you, correct?
Correct.
Now, did this revelation about these conversations didn't suddenly come to you, did they, in around Christmas of this year, this past Christmas? They didn't just suddenly come to your mind that you had forgotten to mention it,
Object, Your
did
Honor.
they?
Compound, argumentative.
Well, this is cross-examination. So the question is essentially,
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor. So this didn't just come to you after close to 5 years, did it?
He did.
You hadn't remembered it for almost 5 years and then remembered it after this agreement was granted in December, correct?
I met with the prosecutors sometimes around that time, and they asked me if there's anything else that comes to your memory.
Yeah. And you didn't tell them it then, did you?
No, I didn't.
No. You got a call after your lawyer called the state's attorney's office to tell them, oh, you had something you wanted to add. Isn't that correct? Right after the New Year's?
I don't recall if it was right after the New Year's, but yes,
January 4th? Does that sound about right?
yes.
And as I understand your statement, and I want to get this correct, you didn't give this most recent statement recorded, right? They didn't videotape that or audio tape it, did they?
No,
You didn't give it to them in writing either, did you?
I don't believe so, no.
But as I understand your statement, let's talk about the statement after Jennifer Dulos' disappearance. This conversation occurred on the Tuesday after, the first day back to work, correct?
Yes,
And this would be the same day that Mr. Dulos trying to get you to write out where you were on that Friday, correct?
correct.
And at some point, as I understand your testimony yesterday, you said that Ms. Troconis was looking for a wheelbarrow to move firewood, correct?
Correct.
So I just want to be clear, had you helped her move firewood before to the porch, to the house?
I don't recall it.
You know that they would use the fireplace, correct?
Yes.
And that there was firewood that would be stacked up on that outside back porch?
I don't recall it.
Well, you said that you were taking firewood from a shed,
Yes.
right? Did you ever help gather any of that firewood?
That was the first time I helped Michelle.
The first time you helped Michelle, but had you helped put firewood in that shed before?
In the shed?
Yeah,
Yes,
because that was the firewood that was used in the fireplace in the house, correct?
I believe so.
And this would be while you were getting the wheelbarrow or while you were getting the firewood that you had this conversation?
What do you mean by this?
The one about after the disappearance, where you testified yesterday about the firewood and the wheelbarrow. Was it getting the firewood itself or just getting the wheelbarrow to put firewood in?
It was getting the firewood from the woodshed and putting it on the back porch.
And she was with you at this point, right?
Yes,
And you testified she was upset, correct? She was very upset, right?
yes,
And she was telling you that her face and her daughter's face was all over the internet, correct?
correct.
Her daughter was 12 years old at the time, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And there they were being connected to the disappearance of Mrs. Dulos, correct?
Correct,
By all this internet stuff, correct?
correct.
And she was upset about that, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
And you knew there was a lot of publicity about this, right?
yes,
In fact, you had searched a lot of it online over the weekend, correct?
correct.
You told the police you had been looking at all the news stories about it, right?
I don't recall telling them, but.
But you at least tell us today, you did search and see all these stories about it, right?
Yes.
And trying to connect, at that point, Fotis Dulos to the disappearance, right?
At that point, no.
Well, it was mentioning him about the divorce and everything, wasn't it?
Wait, I object to the question. I thought he was asking Mr. Gumienny whether or not Mr. Gumienny was trying to make a connection. Is he
Well,
talking
the
about?
court
the
Oh,
understands.
I already, if I
Well,
thought that.
the
I'll-
court understands the question to be, what did you read from those news reports?
Yes.
I don't recall it at that time, over that weekend, what was on the news already.
The point being that both Mr. Dulos's name and my client's name were being connected to stories about the disappearance, correct?
Possible.
And she was upset about the fact, particularly, that her daughter was being blasted on the social media and the internet, correct?
I didn't see her daughter on the media, but that's what she said, yes.
Okay. And what she said to you was, you told this to the inspectors last month, was that she is, that, let's put the profanity aside for a minute, but referring to Ms. Dulos, that she was playing games, right?
Yes.
Correct? She said she is playing games, right? Her picture and my picture are on the internet, right?
Yes,
And then she said, I'm going to kill that bee when she turns up. Isn't that what she said to you?
yes.
And you thought the same thing at that time, didn't you?
I'm just going to object, Your Honor, relevance.
Well, the question is a bit confusing. You thought the same thing about what?
I'll rephrase. You thought she might turn up, Ms. Dulos, didn't you, at that point?
Yes,
You believed Mr. Dulos when he had said that, she may have just disappeared and run away, correct?
yes,
And he told you she had done it before, right?
yes,
And I take it also, though, that based on your testimony from yesterday, you had at least a friendly relationship with Mrs. Dulos, particularly when she was living in Farmington, correct?
correct.
You actually helped her, according to your testimony, move her stuff down, you said, to Pound Ridge, right?
Correct.
And for the record, where is Pound Ridge?
I'm not sure, I think it's New York.
But it's near Fairfield County, right? It's over the border somewhere?
I don't recall it.
Did you actually physically move her belongings to a house at Pound Ridge?
Yes,
In your truck?
don't remember which vehicle.
I'm sorry?
I don't remember which vehicle.
All right. But you made multiple trips for her, didn't you?
Correct.
When she was moving out of the house, you were moving things down to a house she either owned or was renting in Pound Ridge, New York, right?
That was house that was, yeah, that her family owned.
Or it was a family-owned house? Okay, that's correct?
Correct.
You didn't tell Mr. Dulos that you were helping Jennifer Dulos move, did you?
No,
You wanted to keep that kind of confidential, I take it.
I don't recall it.
Now, the other thing that you said is around Greek Easter, there was an incident involving a conversation you had with Michelle Troconis around the illness of the dog, right?
Right,
Now, I just want to be clear about one thing. Mr. Dulos was very upset about his dog getting very, very ill, right?
correct.
This was a Labrador Golden Lab that had been owned by the family for many years, correct?
Correct.
You probably, I don't know if you know, but did you know the dog the entire time you worked for Mr. Dulos?
Can you explain the question?
Yeah, had you seen the dog at the house the entire time you were working for the Ford Group?
Yes.
And was the dog there when the children were little?
Yes,
Was it a friendly dog?
very.
Did you ever play with it or pet it or anything?
It was always sitting under my desk in the office.
It was always in the office.
Yes,
So even after Mrs. Dulos moved out, that dog was kind of attached to Mr. Dulos and the staff, right?
yes.
Did you ever walk the dog or go out and play with it?
Possible.
And you saw that it was getting sick, right?
Yes,
Now, I want to be clear about one thing. You're the one that took, the name of the dog is Beckham, right?
correct.
And the reason that you took Beckham to the vet, correct?
Correct.
Because there was, whatever was wrong, they needed to do blood work and stuff, right?
I don't remember what was wrong, but I did take him to the vet.
Do you recall, though, that you went with Miss Troconis' father, Carlos, to the vet?
I don't recall it.
You don't recall having a conversation with Fotis that because Carlos was a doctor, it might be better for him to accompany you to the vet? He would learn more and know more? Does that ring a bell?
I don't recall that, no.
You don't recall that? Okay. In any event, were you in the room when the vet said that, the dog is dying and something needs to be done?
Was I in the room?
When the veterinarian said that?
I don't recall it.
You had a conversation, though, with Mr. Dulos about the fact they had to now euthanize the dog. Do you know what that means?
Yes,
You were so you know what it means. So my next question is, were you in the conversation with Mr. Dulos when he said he had to euthanize the dog?
at Fort Jefferson, not at the vet.
Oh, no, back at Fort Jefferson, right?
Yes,
And he was very upset about that, wasn't he?
very sad.
And what you said yesterday is, as I understood it, is Mr. Dulos wanted to allow the children to see their dog one more time before it had to be put to sleep, correct?
Correct.
And he was upset because his wife said no, right?
Yes,
Your testimony from yesterday also, as I understand it, was that when he said that and he talked about how upset he was, you said that my client said something with profanity that she should be, I want to get it correct here. That bitch should be buried next to the dog. That's your testimony, right?
correct.
And you said that it was an effort, you saw it as an effort for Ms. Troconis to cheer up Fotis, right?
That's how I understood.
So like as a joke, right? A sick joke, but still a joke, right?
I wouldn't call it a joke, but yeah.
Well, you're cheering somebody up with some humor, right?
Not that kind of humor, but yeah.
Okay. Now, it's your testimony that she used the profanity in this conversation. Is it your testimony that Michelle often used profanity, swear words in English in her conversations around you?
I don't recall it.
Ever before, right?
She might, but I don't recall it.
Okay. So sometime over the weekend of Memorial Day, you found out that Jennifer was missing, right?
Yes,
And that was on the weekend, that would have been on the Sunday, I believe you testified? You found it out?
believe so, yes.
And you received a phone call from Fotis Dulos in the afternoon where he told you that his wife was missing, correct?
Correct.
But you also had a conversation that you would not be back to work until Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day, correct?
Correct.
On that Sunday is when you started searching about the missing wife of Fotis Dulos. Isn't that correct?
I don't recall it, but if it's in my phone search history, I don't deny it.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is the police, in fact, in one of the interviews, said to you that they had your phone data, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. The police, in one of their interviews in June or July of 2019, told you that after they seized your phone, they were downloading the data from it. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And one of the things that they told you was that you were searching about the disappearance. Does that ring a bell?
Possible, yes.
So it was at least something of interest to you to see how much news media coverage there was, right?
I wouldn't say how much news coverage was it. Like, I could have seen it on TV or something and starts researching it.
You were curious about the investigation, weren't you?
I was curious about what's going on.
But as you said multiple times yesterday, you were certain that at that time that Fotis Dulos had nothing to do with it, right?
Right.
And I also just want to be clear, you weren't sure which day you saw my client and Mr. Dulos in the kitchen. Do you remember testifying yesterday about Mr. Dulos wanting to write down where you were on Friday? Do you remember that?
Object misstates the testimony, Judge.
Well, of course, what was said yesterday is not as fresh as what is said today, so the court is going to allow the question.
Can you repeat the question?
Do you remember testifying yesterday that there was a time when you went into the kitchen after Memorial Day and you saw Fotis Dulos and my client there?
Yes.
Mr. Dulos at that time had told you that the police had taken his phone away the previous Saturday, right?
He didn't tell me when, that he told me that his phone was taken away, yes.
And that's why he asked if he could look through your phone to see what time you had called him and what time you had texted him and things like that, right?
He asked me, yes, he asked me if I was calling him, and then I started looking in the phone, and he asked me if he can see my phone.
And you, according to what you told the police, it was to see if the times could be defined, correct? Pinpointed.
Possible.
This also was not the day that your Tacoma was brought to the car wash, correct?
I'm not sure if that was the same day in the afternoon. You're talking about Tuesday now, right?
Yeah.
Or the next day?
Well, that's what I'm asking. It wasn't the time when you came back and saw that your car in the afternoon had been washed and cleaned was not the same day as this conversation in the kitchen about the writing down what you did on Friday and looking at your phone, correct?
I'm not sure if that was the same day or not.
You went down to New Canaan that Tuesday?
I don't
Which
recall.
Tuesday?
The day after Memorial Day?
I don't recall it.
Didn't you say yesterday that when you stopped into the office before going down to New Canaan?
Yes.
All right, so that refreshes your
Yes,
recollection from
yes,
yesterday, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And you were down in New Canaan that Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day, with which vehicle?
I believe white Jeep Cherokee.
You had had your Tacoma all weekend long, right?
Correct.
We just saw minutes ago an image of your Tacoma with the, you called it the dirt bike in the back of that vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to be clear about this. You keep calling this a dirt bike, but it was actually a motocross motorcycle, right?
This is what it's called among dirt bike riders. This is what it's called. It's called dirt bike.
All right. But this is a registered motor vehicle, correct?
Yeah.
You didn't register it though, did you?
No.
In fact, you were supposed to pay Mr. Troconis to buy that motorcycle, isn't that right?
No.
You were not.
I paid Mr. Dulos for that motorcycle.
You knew it was my client's motorcycle though, didn't you?
Yes.
You never paid her anything, right?
Correct.
You never got any title for it, did you?
Yes, correct.
That's correct, right? And in fact, after Mr. Troconis had to move out of Fort Jefferson Crossing, she asked for it back, right?
I don't recall when she asked for it back.
Well, it was after I was her lawyer, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because you remember meeting me to return the bike at a parking lot in Avon, correct?
I didn't meet you. I saw you.
Okay. How long did this interaction with Mr. Dulos in the kitchen take place before you went down to New Canaan on that Tuesday after Memorial Day?
I don't recall it.
An hour?
Possible.
As you already testified, you didn't need to keep track of your time, did you?
Yes.
I'm correct about that? You didn't
Yes.
have to, you didn't punch a clock, right?
Correct.
You didn't have to write down your hours, right?
Correct.
So you came and went, as long as the job got done, Dulos was happy, and the group got its projects done on time, right?
Correct.
You testified that Mr. Dulos was trying to get you to write down what you did on Friday, but you said, I know what I did, I don't need to write it down. You remember saying that?
Not exact the words that you said, but
Well, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not using your exact words. I would have to order a transcript. But am I correct that that was the scenario, yes, what you said yesterday?
correct.
And Mr. Dulos was being kind of pushy about it, right?
I believe he said that was a suggestion of his lawyer.
Okay, well, let's get into it. You knew he had more than one lawyer, right?
At that time, I didn't know he had any lawyers. I mean, that was the first time I heard that he has a lawyer.
Well, didn't you testify that whenever he was meeting with his lawyer, that he would ask that, you not come in, or that you do this, that he meet privately with the lawyer?
That was divorce lawyer, I believe.
That's the divorce lawyer. But did you also know that the Farber family, that is Jennifer's family, was suing the Ford Group?
I don't recall if I knew about that at that time.
You did not know?
I don't recall it.
Okay. So all you knew was that he was meeting with a lawyer, right?
I believe he told me divorce lawyer.
That's what you believe. Did you know who Kent Mawhinney was?
I never met Ken Moy.
Do you know who he was?
Do I know now who he was?
No. Did you know then who he was?
I don't believe so, no. I never met Kent Moy.
So you didn't know Mr. Mawhinney was one of Mr. Dulos' lawyers back then?
I remember prior to 2016, when I was applying for my green card, he mentioned someone to me, but I'm not sure if that was Kent Moy. He mentioned some lawyer that he was helping him or his mom with obtaining legal status in this country. So it's possible that's when I heard of Kent Moy.
All of these conversations that we're now talking about, this was before you replaced the seats in your Tacoma, right?
Correct.
And it was before Mr. Dulos asked you to replace those seats, isn't it true?
It is.
About 11:15, we'll stand in our morning recess. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss the case.
Session. Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning. Please be seated. Thank you. We can bring the jury in, please.
Next image.
Would counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Judge.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to just turn this, is there a remote for this thing?
Is it on?
Nope.
Oh, our screen isn't on yet, is our? No.
Yeah, it's on.
Is that screen on?
Yes.
All right, before we put on the monitor, I'm just going to show you an image and tell me if you recognize that. This was from Exhibit Y for identification. Would you just look at that image, please? It's not the screen yet. It was just for the, it hasn't been offered as a full yet. Okay. Do you recognize that to be Beckham?
I don't see it.
Oh, I thought, oh, is it on the wrong?
Is the screen on in front of him?
Is this screen on?
It was, and
Oh, this shut them both off.
All right.
You just have to hit the button on the bottom.
On the bottom?
I can do it. Okay. That may just, the remote handles all of them. It won't be on our screen.
can you go to one more time?
It's-
Yep.
All right, since the only screen that's on is this one, I'm going to stand here. Do you recognize that to be Beckham?
It looks like it, yes.
And you see, and does that fairly and accurately look the way he looked at the end of April of 2019 after he'd just come back from the vet?
I don't recall seeing him when he came back from the vet.
Didn't you bring him back? You have a bandage on his arm?
I don't recall that, no.
You do not.
Must be someone else who brought him back.
Right. But do you recognize that to be Beckham, or you can't tell that one golden
It's a-
retriever?
It's a golden retriever. It looks like it, but
Does look like Beckham, right? Right. And that would be what he would look like at the end of April 2019, around the time you brought him to the vet?
possible.
All right. I'd offer that image, Your Honor.
I object to the image on relevance grounds, Judge, and also the fact that it hasn't been authenticated as the dog.
Well, relevance.
The relevance is that it does show that the dog had been, at the vet, it's bandaged, it had blood work done. That's the purpose of this image.
Well, that's a fact, but course, relevant evidence is evidence that has any tendency to make a material fact more likely or less likely than it would be without the evidence. So what's the material fact for which this offer is made?
The fact that there might have been animal blood in the Suburban when this dog was brought in the other Suburban, that is the one from Mr. Dulos, the dog was taken.
Do you wish to respond, counsel?
Animal blood in the Suburban?
Well, that's the claim on relevance. Do you wish to be heard?
Yeah, I object on relevance grounds. There's absolutely no nexus between that event and also animal blood that comes back as a profile to Jennifer Dulos. I don't see how this is relevant at all. And with respect to the Suburban, which Suburban are we referring to?
The 2015 Suburban for which there was zero evidence of Jennifer Dulos.
Well, this is now an effort to waft into the jury box either evidence that has been admitted or evidence that has yet to be adduced. So if the objection is relevance, the court is not certain in which vehicle the animal was transported to the vet.
I will lay that foundation.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Gumienny, Beckham was taken to the vet in Fotis Dulos' Suburban, wasn't he?
I'm not sure if that was Suburban or the Jeep.
Well, the Jeep was newer, right?
What do you mean newer?
The Jeep was in better condition, a newer vehicle, right?
Possibly, yes.
So it's your testimony that you don't recall that you brought the dog to the vet in the Suburban because it was a larger vehicle?
I'm not sure what vehicle that I brought them to.
So you're not disputing the fact that you used the Suburban, right?
I'm not disputing, no.
Okay, you drove, I believe you testified, you drove any of the vehicles that belonged to the Ford Group, right?
Yes.
On any given day, right?
Very, very rarely the Suburban.
But you preferred the Jeep, is what you said, right?
Yes.
But you drove the Raptor, right?
Yes.
And you also drove the Suburban, right?
Not work related. And it was only driving
Sure.
Jennifer to airport, Fotis to airport, and
Bringing the
kids.
dog maybe to the vet?
I don't deny it, possibly.
Okay. I would offer it again, Your Honor.
Well, Judge, I object. First of all, there's still no evidence that this is in fact Beckham the dog, number one. Number two, there's no evidence that Beckham the dog was actually transported in the particular vehicle, apparently, which Mr. Schoenhorn is trying to make the connection to. Number three, there's no evidence where Beckham was in the vehicle. Number four, there is no evidence that Beckham bled in the vehicle. I just don't see the relevance of this at all, quite frankly,
Well,
at this point.
the issue is not, at this point, whether the state considers certain evidence strong or weak. If the testimony from the witness is that he can't remember whether he transported the dog in the Suburban or any other vehicle, he said he did not deny that it could have been the Suburban, and that there was a possibility of animal blood being in the Suburban. The court is going to overrule the objection.
Could you now, is the large screen on?
Yeah.
The screen is still not on.
It's on.
Oh, it is? The door. The same. So you said that this conversation took place around Greek Easter, correct?
Which conversation?
The conversation with Michelle about Beckham took place around Greek Easter, correct?
That's what I said, yes.
And Greek Easter was, in 2019 was just around April 27th, wasn't it?
I don't recall it when the Greek Easter was, but
Greek Easter is a different,
if this is what it says on the calendar, then
it's different than, let's say, regular Easter, right? The Catholic Easter, right?
yes.
Yes?
Yes,
All right. Do you remember Beckham coming back from the vet before he was having to be put down?
I don't. The last time I saw Beckham was when I left him at the vet.
Well, when Mr. Dulos told you how upset he was that the children wouldn't get to see the dog before he was euthanized, wasn't Beckham still alive?
He was.
And he was very sick, though. right?
Objection, Judge. May he finish his answer?
Well, the witness was not given an opportunity.
Very well. You had
My
more to say.
understanding at that time was that the Beckham was still at the vet.
He was still at the vet and not brought back to the house?
My understanding was at that time, yes.
But you knew that the dog was going to be euthanized, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your working for the group. You said you started working for the group full-time since 2016, correct?
On the books, yes.
Well, when you say on the book, so before that you were working, what, under the table? Is that what that means?
As a subcontractor.
As a subcontractor. You were being paid as a, well, I guess you'd call it 1099 employee?
Correct.
You also said that before that you were working at another building company doing framing, right?
Correct.
You also talked about when you got your green card, and you were talking about that yesterday, correct?
Correct.
So based on your math, you were working before you got your green card, isn't that true?
True.
But you had known Fotis Dulos for several years, even prior to working for him as a contract employee under a 1099 form, right?
Correct.
I think you said that you knew him since, what, 2004 or 5?
About that time.
That's about right?
Yes.
He was already building homes back then, right?
Yes.
They're kind of his brand, if you will, were kind of luxury, large homes, right?
Correct.
You also did other, I'll call them odd jobs, but maybe chores for Mr. Dulos that were not part of your regular group responsibilities, correct?
Can you explain the chores?
Well, you mowed lawns, right?
Yes.
You would sometimes, like you just said, bring firewood up to the house.
I don't recall it, but possible.
You would fix things that broke in the house, sinks and whatnot.
Yes.
And your schedule depended upon the particular project, right?
In which time period are you talking about?
Well, let's talk about 2018 and 2019 while working for the group.
2018 and 2019, I was full-time employee.
Right, I'm talking about your schedule, though. Like when you would come in, when you'd go to the job, how long you stayed, depended on the project, right?
Correct.
And it depended upon what needed to be done at a particular time, right?
Right.
If you needed to meet with a subcontractor installing plumbing or fixtures, you would have to meet that person to let them in, be there while they were doing their work, at least part of the time, correct?
I don't have to be there. Usually I would meet with the contractor with his first day on the job.
After that, you would have to check to make sure it's done,
I
right?
was just check on him every now and then.
your hours were flexible. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes,
Nobody checked, you didn't have to like write down where you were going at any particular time, right?
correct.
You also indicated, as I understand it, that you didn't socialize with Fotis Dulos outside of work, correct?
Correct.
But you did go to certain dinner parties and events that took place at Mr. Dulos's home, right?
Right.
In fact, Greek Easter that year, there was a large gathering outside on the porch with what, 15, 20, maybe more people, right?
I don't recall it.
You don't recall sitting out on the,
I recall it being there. I don't recall that there was 15 or 20 people.
you don't remember almost all of Michelle Troconis' family had flown from all over the country to be there?
I remember some of them.
And other members of the staff came to that dinner as well?
Yes,
It's also true that Mr. Dulos himself liked to cook. Isn't that true?
yeah,
You also testified that Mr. Dulos would be in the office many times, correct, while you were there?
correct.
You worked at the same, was it the same large desk? And you had a different workstation, or did you have a separate desk?
I have a separate desk.
Was it in the same room as the large glass conference table?
No,
Was it in the one of the side rooms that was there?
yes,
But you had your own workspace, correct?
correct,
And you could let yourself into the office at any time, correct?
correct.
There was a separate entrance to the four-group offices, right?
Right,
In fact, people would often come in to the office without even having to go through the residence portion of that home, correct?
most of the time.
You weren't always in that office, though, were you?
What do you mean?
It wasn't a desk job, your position as a project manager.
I think it's fair to say that I'd spend more time on the job site than in the office.
Like I said, so you were able to go out, you'd be at the job site, supervise, correct?
Correct.
Sometimes you would run out and buy parts or get something that was needed at the house, right?
What do you mean by the house?
For the job site, you might have to pick up something for the job site yourself, right?
Yes,
That was part of your job, right?
correct.
And you were responsible for making sure that subcontractors showed up when they were supposed to show up, right?
Correct,
And got the job done when they were supposed to get it done.
correct.
You talked to Mr. Dulos almost every workday?
As needed.
Well, there would at least be either a text or a communication, verbal or email, almost every day you were working, correct?
I wouldn't say every day. Could have been days without communication.
Mr. Dulos did travel a fair bit, correct?
Travel.
What?
What do you mean by travel?
Travel, like not be in Farmington at the Ford Group, he'd be someplace else.
Yeah,
You knew that you knew that he was big into water skiing, right?
yes,
He was actually competitive in water skiing, wasn't he? He would participate in tournaments, right?
right,
And he would travel to go to those tournaments, right?
I think it's fair to say that, yeah.
And you've been doing that the whole time that you knew him, right?
At the very beginning, I didn't know about this water skiing.
But when you came to work for him as a full-time employee, you knew, right?
Yeah,
You knew that some of his children also were into competitive water skiing, right?
correct.
And you mentioned the pond, right? You said that yesterday?
Correct.
Had you ever been to the pond?
Yes,
So you knew who Mr. Haynes was, right? The owner of the pond?
yes,
Hutch, called him Hutch, right?
correct.
You'd met him? right?
Yes,
He was a friend of Mr. Dulos as well?
I believe so, yes.
And I think you were asked if you ever water skied, and I can't remember, you said that wasn't something you liked to do?
Dulos offered me, but I,
Didn't appeal to you?
not really, no.
And they call it a pond, but it's really a lake with a jumping, one of these ramps, right?
Correct.
When you were in the office, you might be there an entire day without knowing who was in the residence part of the house, correct?
Correct.
It was a big enough house that people could be walking and talking in one of the other rooms in the house portion. You would have no idea whether they were there or not, correct?
Correct.
People parked sometimes in the back of the building, that is, you'd go through the archway to the rear of the house, right?
Yes.
People could park outside on a pavement area behind the house, right?
Right.
You also testified that you would put your Tacoma, well, let me ask you this. Where did you usually park your Tacoma if you were leaving it at 4 Jefferson Crossing?
At the back parking spot.
At some point, you started parking it in the garage, correct?
Correct.
You testified that your truck was leaking oil, right?
Right.
You testified it was also, as I understand it, leaking steering fluid.
That's the same thing.
So the hydraulic line for the steering was leaking, correct?
Correct.
By the way, when people came to the office, would they park in the driveway in the front, or would they pull into the back through the archway?
Can you specify what people?
Customers, I mean, people that were coming there for the, to visit the 4 group offices.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say both
Where?
front and back.
They would park in the front as well as back?
Yes.
Is that, what about employees? Would they park in the front of the garages?
Mainly on the back of the house, yes.
What about real estate agents, realtors?
Mainly on the back of the house.
And what about customers? That is, people who are coming maybe to buy one of the houses or look at plans for houses.
Customers would park on front of the house and behind the house.
There weren't any signs that said no parking in front of the garages or anything, were there?
No.
There was also one of these long, shall we say, curved crescent driveways, right?
Correct.
Did any people ever park closer to the front of the house and point their vehicles out back towards Jefferson Crossing on the other side where the garages were?
Possible.
The first time that you spoke to police officers in connection with this case was on May 31st, 2019, right?
That was
That Friday,
after
31st.
Jennifer disappeared.
Sorry?
The Friday after Jennifer disappeared.
The Friday after Jennifer's disappearance. That's the first time you spoke to the police about it, right?
Correct.
You were in the Jeep.
Yes.
You were driving to drop off tools at the office that day, right?
Right.
You said you saw a number of cars there, right?
Correct.
They were all gray, either SUVs or the kind of vehicles that looked like state police cars, weren't they?
I don't recall if they were all gray.
Well, you believe they were police vehicles, correct?
At first sight, I didn't know who was.
You saw people standing in the driveway, correct?
Correct.
Weren't they wearing vests that said police or state police on them?
I don't recall it, no.
You don't recall that. So, as I understand you then, you see people are in the driveway, but you're not curious to drive in to see what's going on, right?
Correct.
Total stranger standing around and you just drove past the residence, right?
Right.
Past the office, right?
Yes.
Not even pulling in the second entrance, right?
Correct.
You pulled in to, you said you went all the way down to the end of Jefferson Crossing and there's a dead-end cul-de-sac there, right?
Right.
You turned around the cul-de-sac and started coming back, right?
Right.
Now, this was your office space, wasn't it? For Jefferson Crossing?
Right.
You had every right to be there, right?
Right.
So the reason you didn't want to go into that driveway is you did not want to have to talk to the police, correct?
I didn't know if that was the police at that time.
You thought just some random people were standing on the property.
I don't remember what I was thinking 5 years ago.
You didn't see any couples looking to buy that house, did you?
No.
You did stop your car as you were driving back towards Eli Road, didn't you?
Correct.
That's when the police came in the road and told you to stop, right?
Right.
Then you recognized that they were police officers, right?
I believe so.
You're not sure? You just stopped for some random person?
Yes.
Did you roll down the window?
Possible, yes.
You don't know?
It might have been rolled down already.
The Jeep was air conditioned, right?
Right.
And although May 31st was still spring, it was warm enough you could use the air conditioning, right?
Right.
Do you remember that the person who approached you was a detective named Butin?
Correct.
The same one who interviewed you a couple of times that you testified about yesterday, correct?
Correct.
Detective Butin asked you where you were coming from, didn't he?
He did.
You told him you were coming from New Canaan, right?
Right.
You didn't tell him at that point that you were actually over at 585 Deer Cliff, did you? In Avon.
At that time, no.
You didn't tell him you'd been at a junkyard in Southington for a couple of hours, did you?
No.
You didn't tell him you'd been to a second, I don't know if it was a junkyard or used car parts place in Avon?
Not Avon.
What? You did, you what?
Not Avon, no.
What town was the second place in?
I believe Berlin.
Berlin. So you went from Southington down to Berlin, right?
Correct.
So Berlin's even further south from Farmington, isn't it?
Possible.
It's below New Britain, right?
I don't know.
Well, you know what the Berlin Turnpike is, right?
Yes.
Don't you go down and the next town is Meriden?
I don't know. I would have to look on the map.
Fair enough. In any event, you didn't mention that you'd been in Berlin, right?
To the police.
To the police.
No.
No. And you didn't mention that you'd also gone to the AutoZone in either Avon or Canton, wherever it's located, right?
Correct.
And that's on Route 44, right?
Correct.
They did take you out of asked you to step out, right?
Yes.
And they frisked you, right? You said that they asked you if you had any weapons or anything else? They asked about drugs or anything?
I believe so.
All right. But in any event, they frisked you, correct?
Correct.
Did you give them permission to do that, or did they just do it anyway?
Just going to object relevance.
Relevance.
It's within the scope of direct, Your Honor.
Well, whether he gave permission may go to what his state of mind was. But the fact that he was searched or patted down is already in evidence. So what the court is going to do, the court does not know for what reason the question was asked, because the court does not prepare the case for the defense or the case for the state. But it may, because it may go to his state of mind, the court's going to overrule the objection.
Can I answer it?
Sure.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Did you give them permission at that point to search you?
I don't recall if they asked me.
In any event, after they searched you, Detective Butin suggested that you had been untruthful to him about where you were coming from. Isn't that correct?
I don't recall that.
Didn't he say you're too soaking wet to have just been driving up from New Canaan in an air-conditioned car, or words to that effect?
I believe he said something that I was sweaty, and what was I doing?
Okay. And it's at that point you told him you had been removing seats from your boss's car down the road in Avon, right?
Correct.
But you didn't tell, and you did indicate to him that you were going to put those seats in your own truck, right? You told him that.
Correct.
You had them in the back of the Porsche seats in the back of your vehicle at that point, right? The Jeep.
Correct.
But you didn't, even then, you didn't tell him, oh, I was also looking at junkyards in Berlin and Southington. You didn't tell him that, right?
Nobody asked.
Well, he asked where you'd been or where you're coming from, and
My understanding was where you've been earlier that day, and that's what I told him. I was coming down from New Canaan.
well, earlier in that day, he wasn't asking where you were coming from at that moment.
I believe I understood where I was coming from earlier that day. I can't remember.
Okay. But again, you only volunteered even Avon when they questioned the truthfulness of your answer about New Canaan, right?
He asked me why was I sweaty, and I told him that I was removing seats from Cayenne in Avon. Yes, correct.
A couple of days later, the police showed up at your house, you said on June 2nd, right?
Was that Sunday?
Sunday, yeah.
Correct.
If May 31st was a Friday, right, you agreed June 2nd would have been a Sunday, correct?
Correct.
At that time, they took your phone, right?
They asked for my permission to give him the phone, yes.
But you said you gave them permission, but that wasn't the whole scenario, was it?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. You got Mr. Urzo on the phone about the fact that the police wanted to take your phone, didn't you?
To my best recollection, I told him that I agree with them to take my phone, and I asked if I can just call Mr. Urso to speak with him about it.
And you know this interaction with the police was recorded, don't you?
Now I do, yes.
You didn't know then?
No.
But you know that Mr. Urzo, in your presence, told the police they didn't have a warrant.
Objection,
right?
Judge, relevance.
Well, what is happening is that this whole conversation is being recounted. So what Attorney Urso told his client has to relate to something other than just a chronology of the dialogue. So, counsel, what is the relevance of Attorney Urso telling Mr. Gumienny that the police needed a warrant?
It goes directly to this witness's credibility about whether he gave permission or not and what the circumstances were.
Well, The fact that this witness has a attorney-client relationship with Attorney Urso, and that Attorney Urso told him the police need a warrant.
No, Your Honor. Mr. Urso told the police on a recording that they needed a warrant. When Mr.
So what is the question?
In your presence, did Mr. Urso tell the police that they needed a warrant to take your phone?
And there's an objection.
There's an objection on relevance grounds, Judge.
And when you talk about a recording, counsel, this is a recording that is not in evidence, correct?
Correct.
Court is going to sustain the objection.
The police told you whatever Mr. Urso said something to the police, correct? In your presence, right?
Correct.
And then the police said to you that if you did not agree to give them your phone, it would be months before you'd get it back, didn't they?
Correct.
So it was only after they said that that you agreed to let them have your phone, right?
I agreed to let them have my phone at first when they asked me, if I remember it correctly. And then I told Detective Newton if I can just call my attorney and just speak with him, make sure he's okay with it.
And then you put Mr. Urso, your attorney, on with the police, right?
Yes.
On a speakerphone, right?
Yes.
And that was when the subject, that if they didn't have a warrant, they couldn't take it.
Objection.
Was raised, correct?
Objection,
Well,
Judge.
the court already indicated that unless it was not clear, the discussion of the warrant is not relevant. There's already been evidence that the police, at least through the question, told Mr. Gumienny that it would be months before he could get back the phone under certain circumstances. Sustained.
In any event, the police said if you wanted to see your phone back faster, you got to give them permission to take it. Isn't that what they said to you?
At some point, I remember saying that, yeah.
Okay, that's them saying it to you, right?
Yeah.
And then they gave you, then you gave them permission to take it, right?
I'm not sure if I gave him permission to take it prior to that or after to that.
Mr. Gumienny, wasn't it after the whole conversation we just talked to you about that you agreed to let them get your phone because they said that you'd get it back faster?
My understanding was, I agree with them to take my phone and downloaded it, and I called Mr. Urso just to make sure he's okay with it. From what I remember, Mr. Urso said, no, they need a warrant. They can seize it, but they can't search it until they have a warrant. And I explained to Mr. Urso that I have nothing to hide, and I want him to download my phone. This is how I remember it.
Do you remember the part that I've asked you about, that the police said if they
believe that
had to
was-
get in, if they had to do those steps, it would be months before you saw the phone again?
I believe that was after, yes.
Okay. The police came back to your home on June 6, 2019, correct? 4 days later?
I don't recall the date, but
A few days later after that first encounter?
yes.
Incidentally, on that first day, they wanted to take the Jeep, didn't they?
Can you specify what you mean by first date?
Yeah, the Jeep, when they came on June 2nd, wasn't the Jeep parked in your driveway?
Yes.
They wanted to take it, right?
I believe that was the second visit,
On the June 6th date, they wanted to take it?
Sunday, right?
Well, Sunday's the 2nd.
Judge, if I may, there was 2 separate trips by the police on June 2nd to Mr. Gumienny's house, and he's indicating it was the second visit. So perhaps if counsel can clarify which visit he's referring to when they wanted to take the Jeep.
All right, I thought it was one, but there were 2 separate times they came to your house that Sunday?
Yes,
Same officers?
I believe so, yes.
At some point when they were there, you had already found out that Mr. Dulos had been arrested, right? The night before.
I don't remember if I was aware of that.
For either of those visits on June 2nd by the police?
I don't remember.
In any event, they wanted to take the Jeep, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't give them permission to do it because it belonged to the Ford Group, right?
I don't recall it.
Let me jump to June 6th. Do you recall, I believe what you were testifying, that they wanted you to show them where the power line trail was in the water company property, right?
Correct.
Where you had ridden, how many times, let me interrupt that. How many times had you ridden motocross, motorcycling in the power line trail with Mr. Dulos?
Twice.
Twice?
Yes.
And on your own, had you gone on the power line trail?
Never.
That trail has got a lot of large gravel, correct?
Yeah.
It's a power line trail for large utility vehicles, correct?
Yes.
It's very steep in some places, right?
I wouldn't call it steep.
In the area around Route 44, aren't there cliffs and whatnot? You have to wind up and around to stay on the trail?
Yeah, but that's not a trail for power line trucking.
Well, the power lines themselves are on this steep gravel road, correct?
Yes, but there is no gravel in that particular area you're talking about.
Because it's cliffs
Correct.
and rocks, right? Very difficult if you don't have a wide tired vehicle, correct?
Correct.
In fact, when you first agreed to go with the police, you were going to take your other vehicle besides the Tacoma, right?
Right.
Which was the other vehicle you had at that time?
It was my wife's car.
What kind of car was it?
It's a sedan.
And then I think you also testified the Tacoma was also registered to your wife, right?
Correct.
So she had a sedan. Was it an all-wheel drive sedan? Was the Tacoma all-wheel drive?
Yes.
So when you were taking the sedan, it was the police that said, well, why don't you take the Tacoma because of the terrain? Isn't that what they said?
I don't recall it.
Didn't you
I
say,
don't recall the terrain part.
well, didn't they say they'd rather you bring the all-wheel drive vehicle because of how difficult it would be to drive through there with a regular sedan?
I recall them to ask me if I could take my truck, but I don't recall the terrain.
You don't recall the reason why?
No.
When you got to the power line, as I understand it, this is Route 44 on Avon Mountain where you stopped, right?
Correct.
So let me just see if I set this up because, you know, I'm from that area, but the people here are not. So Albany Avenue is Route 44, it goes all the way up, climbs up Avon Mountain, right? From West Hartford, right?
I'm not sure. I rarely ever go that way.
Well, it's a steep road. up
Avon
to the-
Mountain, yes.
Avon Mountain. And then down the other side, it's quite steep down to Avon, right?
Correct.
You come down to Avon as the other side of the mountain, correct?
Correct.
When you went from Simsbury to your office at Ford Group, did you usually take Deer Cliff Road?
Yes.
So you would have to come from Simsbury. Did you usually come on from like down on the Farmington Valley side of Avon Mountain?
Sometimes.
Well, again, I guess you could go through Bloomfield, but I'm just trying to figure out, did you go up, to get to your office, you usually go up Route 44 and turn right on Deer Cliff Road?
Yes.
Or did you come from West Hartford and go up and turn left?
From Avon.
Okay, so you'd go up, that's that was a steep hill, right?
Yes.
There were always a lot of accidents, especially in the winter up there?
I heard of one or two, yes.
Okay, and then Deer Cliff was almost at the very top of Avon Mountain, right?
Yes.
And then you would drive down Deer Cliff Road, it would turn into Eli Road, right around where Jefferson Crossing is, correct?
Yes.
Now, the power line crossing that was where you stopped your vehicle was just about across from the entrance from the Reservoir 6 parking area, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Reservoir 6 is part of MDC, right?
I have no knowledge of that.
Have you ever been in there?
Yes, but I don't know
Well,
what's part of what.
You know that there's parking, people go hiking and walking around that area, right?
I've seen people parking there, yes.
And you parked, but if you go up a bit, there is a gravel entrance where the gate, where the power line crosses Route 44, right? Am I right?
Possible.
Well, what I'm trying to do is figure out, you said you parked along on the other side from the Reservoir Road, along Route 44.
I parked to the right, yes.
Now, there's a turnout where there's a hiking trail, you know what I'm talking about, right? On the right?
Yes.
And then just before that, a little higher up, there's like the utility entrance for the power company with a metal bar across it, right?
I don't deny it, but I don't recall it.
Did you park up there where the gate was, or did you park in that turnout for people to park so they can go on the hiking trail?
And where the people park, there's multiple parking spots.
Okay, and when you pulled in there, that's when the police handed you the search warrant that they were taking your truck?
Correct.
They didn't tell you before that, did they?
No.
Now, when the police interviewed you on June 6th, they asked you about what Fotis Dulos did on May 24th, didn't they?
Which interview are you talking about?
The same day that they took your truck on Albany Avenue.
I was going to object, Your Honor. I'm confused by the question myself. What interview are we referring to?
June 6th, when the same day that they took your truck. They interviewed you as well, didn't they?
I don't recall it. That was same day? It was different.
Yeah, the same day.
I have many meetings with police. I just don't recall if that was the same day or not.
Okay, whether it's the same day or not, you do remember, well, how many meetings did you have with them, do you recall?
I don't.
Was it more than 5?
Yes.
And then you met with them, like recently, last couple of days?
I didn't meet with them. I think I had a Zoom call.
Okay, and your lawyer was with you for that Zoom call, right?
No.
He was not?
No.
But how many times then, either on Zoom or in person, did you meet with law enforcement about your actions on those days in 2019?
I couldn't tell you.
But it was more than 5?
Yes.
Okay, so it's hard for you to remember when you had a conversation about anything in particular. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. But at various times in 2019, they asked you about Fotis Dulos' whereabouts on May 24th, correct? The day of the disappearance. So I'm saying after that, they asked you about that day multiple times, right?
Correct.
And they asked you about your whereabouts on that day, correct?
Correct.
And you told the police back in early June of 2019 that you liked Fotis Dulos, right?
Yes,
That he was a good boss.
yes.
You believed he was a successful builder.
Don't recall saying that, but
Is that a fair statement, though?
yeah,
You took pride in the work you did in managing his projects, right?
yes,
You thought he did it, you thought these houses were fine homes. They were expensive, but they were fine, right?
yeah, it's fair to say that.
And you told the police that you respected him, that is Dulos,
Yes,
and you told them that he was a, quote, very nice guy, unquote, right? That's how you thought of him.
yeah,
And you weren't making that up, were you?
no,
You were telling them how you really felt about him, right? Then the police also in June of 2019 ask you questions about his ongoing divorce.
Can you specify what?
Well, in general, didn't they ask you about what you knew about what was going on in the divorce?
Yeah,
You knew that the divorce had been going on for a long time, correct?
correct,
You, in fact, had at least helped Jennifer moving stuff out without telling Fotis, right?
right,
So you knew she was planning back then to move out, right?
I don't remember how that started.
At some point, you didn't tell Fotis what she was doing though, right?
I remember Jennifer told me if I could move some stuff for her and not to tell Fotis, but I don't recall if she told me what the reason was for moving it.
But you did what she asked, right?
Yes,
Even though Fotis was your boss, not Jennifer, right?
right,
You told the police that the divorce had been going on for a long time while you were working there, right?
possible.
And you told them that Fotis had complained about how long it was taking to you, didn't he?
I don't recall saying that.
You don't recall saying that?
No.
I gave you the other page, it was up there. You had put it up. You had.
Do you recall the police asking you specifically that Fotis and Jennifer were going through a pretty rough divorce? Fair to say, based on what you know, just kind of being around, is that a pretty accurate statement? Do you remember saying, yeah, he was complaining about it a couple of times, but he wasn't trying to tell me that, like he was almost to the point that he was suspicious that I would tell something to Jennifer. Do you remember telling that to the police?
Yeah, that refreshes my memory.
Okay. So at least a couple of times, you remember him complaining to you about how long it was taking. Right?
Possible, yes.
But you also knew that in the last couple of months before her disappearance, things seemed to be going pretty well for Fotis in the court. Isn't that true?
Yes,
He seemed to be very happy about the way things were coming out. And he was telling you that, right?
he mentioned something like that to me, yes,
And you told that to the police as well, didn't you?
yes,
And he had told you that there was a really good custody report that had just come out, right?
What do you mean by custody report?
A report about who would get custody of the children. He told you that, didn't he?
I believe he told me that there's a pretty good chance of him getting full custody of the kids.
I had given it to you, but there it is.
Do you remember telling the police that about 2 months before, he was in a good mood, like he would only talk to me about the divorce. It was either very good or very bad. And then he said, didn't you say to the police? So he goes that Jennifer hired some kind of psychologist. What's it called? The police say, yeah, psychiatrist, psychologist. And then you said to interview her and the kids to kind of find out what's best for the kids. And Fotis was telling me that he was very unhappy because obviously Jennifer hired him, so he's going to take her side. So him and his lawyer, they were fighting it. This is too long, I'm not going to read
Judge, I'm
the-
just going to object to hearsay at this point. I mean, if Mr. Schoenhorn is
Well, you
gonna-
said hearsay, counsel.
Yes, sir.
Well, first, this is impeachment by what counsel appears to be claiming is a prior inconsistent statement. If, according to the code, the statement should have been shown to the witness first. If the witness admits it, it couldn't come in as extrinsic evidence, but it was never shown to the witness. So first, if the claim is essentially improper impeachment, the court would sustain it.
So, Judge, if I may, the reason I objected to hearsay is because it is an improper impeachment. So I would add that, but that's the gravamen of my objection.
It's not that impeachment can't be accomplished, but it has to be done according to the code.
Judge, according to the code, I either ask him if he said it, if he doesn't, if he admits it, it doesn't need to come in. If he denies it, then it actually comes in. So this is the preliminary question to ask if that refreshes his
Well,
recollection.
counsel,
Yeah.
the defense could have shown him the conversation with the police, determined that it may have refreshed his recollection, and then asked him the question.
Would reading a transcript of your interview refresh your recollection as to what you told the police?
Yes.
I'll mark this for ID. It's page 135 to 136.
May I just see it? So, Judge, I must confess, I don't recall whether or not Mr. Gumienny indicated he needed his memory refreshed at this point.
Well, the code indicates that before extrinsic evidence of a prior inconsistent statement can be offered, the contents of the prior inconsistent statement has to be shown to the witness. In so doing, the witness's recollection would either be refreshed or not.
Understood, Judge.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm just going to, it's a two-page document. So I'm just going to have you read to yourself, starting from here where it's highlighted, and then if you'll just look at the back and see if this refreshes your recollection of what you told the police up to there. And then I'll ask you a question.
You want me to keep going or just stop?
No, that's all I'm going to ask you about, so you can stop there. All right.
Now the question can be asked.
Do you recall now that Mr. Dulos told you that the report, even though he thought that the psychiatrist or psychologist had been hired by his wife's lawyer, that the report came out good and that he had a good chance of getting full custody?
Just going to object, Your Honor, hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes.
I was going to now ask you a little bit about your Tacoma. Did you buy it new in 2001 or did you buy it used?
About a use.
So it was already had sort of, I think you put it, the seats were all like filthy and grimy when you bought it.
Correct.
And that's why you put a pair of Ford motor seats in it, right?
Right.
And you were able to bolt them into the brackets where the bucket seats go in the front of the Tacoma?
I had to modify them, and I was able to do that.
You were able to do that?
Yep.
And those were the seats that were in your vehicle from what year approximately? Soon after you bought it?
I think it's fair to say that, yes.
And you had it at least since 2010 or earlier?
I believe I bought the truck in 2012.
2012, okay. So that was even before you went to work for the Ford Group, correct?
Correct.
It was, however, after you had met Mr. Dulos, right?
Correct.
And you were doing contract work through him, through the other company you worked for, right?
Correct.
When you had your own company for that period of time, that you were operating on your own, did you do any work for either Mr. Dulos or the Ford Group?
When I have, can you repeat the question?
Yes, before you went to work for Mr. Dulos, you had said you started your own LLC and had your own personal company for a little bit, right?
It was an LLC, but my personal company, yes.
You were working under doing business as under your real name, right?
Correct.
Did you do work for Mr. Dulos or the Ford Group when you had your own separate company under your own name?
Correct.
Did you come to their house for any of that work?
Can you specify the
To
year?
4 Jefferson
The
Crossing?
year,
Sorry?
the time period? The
Yeah,
year?
before 2016, did you come to 4 Jefferson Crossing to do any jobs there?
Yes.
And did you meet Mrs. Dulos then?
I think way earlier than that.
Oh, you met her even earlier when you were working for the framing company, you met her?
Yeah, I think so.
So you'd been there sometimes at 4 Jefferson Crossing even before you started your own business, right?
For Jefferson Crossing?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I think Jefferson Crossing was built in 2012.
Was or was not?
I think it was.
Right. So my question is, did you meet Mrs. Dulos at 4 Jefferson Crossing even when you were working for the framing company?
I couldn't meet her at 4 Jefferson Crossing if the Jefferson Crossing wasn't built.
Oh, you said it was not built?
Yes.
Oh. Did you have anything to do with building 4 Jefferson Crossing?
Yes.
You did some of the framing?
All of the framing.
So you would have met did Mrs. Dulos have input in the construction of that house at all?
Can you explain?
Yes. Did she have any input, any say in how the house was going to look or what was going to be in what rooms and whatnot?
I don't recall it, no.
But you did meet her even while you were building that house?
I believe I met her before that.
Even before that? Okay. Now, I know that Mr. McGinnis asked you about the leaking oil from the Tacoma. You could see that the garage of the house at Fort Jefferson was getting stained by dripping oil, couldn't you? From your truck.
I'm assuming yes, but I don't recall seeing it.
But you didn't dispute the fact when he said, listen, can you move your truck? It's, because you knew it was leaking oil, right?
He told me if we could move the truck, but he didn't mention the oil.
But you believed it was because of the oil staining
I
its
assume,
garage
yes.
floor, right? Right?
I assume that, yes.
Okay. You also, wasn't it also true that the shock absorbers were gone in that truck?
Yes,
So it was not a very reliable vehicle, was it?
not at all.
You told, I think yesterday, you said it wouldn't even start sometimes, right?
Correct.
You had some kind of technique where you used your house key to run it against the ignition
Yes,
in order to make it start sometimes, right?
correct.
You didn't show anyone else how to do that, did you?
I don't recall it, no.
That was your own sort of home fix, right?
Yes,
For it, okay. In fact, you at one point told the police when they suggested that your truck was being driven down to New Canaan that it wasn't a reliable vehicle at all to go that far. Didn't you tell them that?
yes.
We just saw a video before I got up this morning of you driving on May 23rd with the Tacoma over to 80 Mountain Spring Road. Do you remember seeing those videos from across the street at 77?
I wasn't driving the Tacoma on May 23rd, no.
Didn't we just see picture of the Tacoma and the Raptor being
Yes.
driven down there?
That was Dulos driving the Tacoma.
Oh, and you were driving the Raptor?
Yes,
All right, and he pulled in with the Raptor, he pulled in with the Tacoma at 80 Mountain Spring, right?
yes,
You pulled in right behind him.
correct.
The driveway, by the way, wasn't asphalt at 80 Mountain Spring, was it?
No,
It was gravel, right?
it was peach stone, I believe.
What is it called?
Peach stone.
But that's not like paving blocks, right? It's some kind of rock, right?
Yes,
Okay, so it's absorbent, right?
yeah,
Whether it's no pool of oil would form on on that, whatever you just, I don't, peat stone, peak stone? I don't know what it
yeah,
is.
I don't remember the exact name, but
It's like a crushed stone maybe of some sort?
wash stone, more like wash stone than crushed stone.
I'm not understanding, quartz?
More like a wash stone than.
Wash stone, so it's
Yeah.
white
a
rocks.
Round instead of sharp.
Got it, crushed up,
Crushed stone, it's
crushed
sharp.
stone, okay. And he turned the car, you said he turned the truck, backed it up, and so it was facing out?
Correct.
And I'm not going to put it back up again, but we saw the picture of the part of the garage and the parking lot. The Tacoma was parked to the right of that photograph. It was sort of out of range of what the image showed us.
Correct.
The Raptor, where did he park that? Where did you park that?
I don't remember how I turned around there.
By the way, even though Fotis drove the Tacoma down that with you behind him in the Raptor, is there a reason why you didn't drive your own truck
And,
that day, May
May
23rd?
23rd?
Yeah.
no,
In fact, I wanted to clarify, you don't remember specifically with the jury that it was May 23rd, the day before, right? Is that a fair statement? You don't recall?
I don't recall, no.
Do you recall that Fotis Dulos had a visit with his children on the Wednesday, the 22nd? So he was down there in the afternoon. Does that ring a bell?
No.
You don't remember
What
that?
was 22nd?
That would be a Wednesday.
But what was the event?
It must have been, what, Thursday? I'm just trying to focus on what day you were being, we just watched the video of the truck being driven down there from May 23rd. So is
Yeah.
that the day, to clarify, that he asked you to move the truck down there?
Yes,
You also remember seeing Stefan Reich and his girlfriend arriving for a dinner at the house, correct?
Yes.
You said hello to them, right?
I did. I remember speaking with Stefan. I don't remember speaking with his girlfriend.
Do you remember his girlfriend, Beth?
Yes, I don't remember speaking with her on that day, no.
Okay, but you remember seeing her?
No, I don't.
I'm sorry?
I don't recall seeing her.
You remember seeing Stefan,
Yes,
and you had some friendly conversation with him?
yes,
He told you they were going to have dinner at the house that evening?
yes.
And the time that we see the Ford, the Raptor and the Tacoma pulling into 80 Mountain Spring was right, I'm sorry, let me withdraw that question. The time we see the two of you in the Raptor driving back up to Fort Jefferson Crossing that night, you went directly back to Fort Jefferson Crossing, right?
From 80 Mountain Spring Road?
From 80 Mountain Spring.
I don't remember. I don't deny it.
Did you drop off Mr. Dulos at the house and take the Raptor?
Yes,
Okay, so does that refresh your memory that you were driving
the Raptor?
the Raptor?
Yes.
Okay. I also want to ask you, you were asked some questions about the wanting to sell the Tacoma. Do you remember those questions by Mr. McGinnis yesterday?
Yes, I do.
You were wanting to sell that Tacoma for a while, isn't that true?
Correct.
And you, in fact, had been researching on Craigslist for used Tacomas, isn't that true?
It is.
And it had been going on for at least a month that you've been looking, right?
More than that.
More than that. You also know that when the police took your phone, they downloaded all your searches, correct?
Possible, yes.
All right. So I'm going to let me speak with counsel for a second.
This is what you need.
Yeah.
Okay. Judge, I have no objection. There was the one photograph which was displayed, which I objected to, but the court received it into evidence. The balance of that disc, I don't have an objection to.
So I asked for Exhibit Y as a full exhibit.
Defense Y admitted as full.
Right. I'm going to show you a group of images one at a time and just, I'll ask you something about it at the end, but I'm going to show you a bunch of images from the search. So if you would, if I could just have the first one, please. You can turn around, it's easier maybe if you want to look behind you, if you want, you can look, you can see it there. So you see that you were searching for a used Tacoma on May 1st, 2019.
That's a history from my phone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one. You see the date? May 5th?
Yes, I do.
That was a used silver Tacoma that you were looking at?
Yes.
All right, next one, please. So this is, what's that say, May 14th? It's a little blurrier than the other one. Yeah, May 14th?
Correct.
Okay, and this looks like, what, an older model?
Yes.
All right, you were looking at that one?
Don't recall it.
All right,
I don't deny it. It's on my phone.
sure. Next one, please. Could you zoom in, please, right here? May 18th, you were looking at one?
Possible.
Okay, next, please. Zoom in, please. May 10th, out of order, but you were looking at a black one on May 10th?
Yes.
Right. Next one, please. May 21, you were looking at one?
Yes.
2019, right? And that one's kind of a decked out one a little bit, right? A little fancier.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, please. May 26th, you were looking at one. Isn't that true? 2
Possible.
days
Yep.
after the disappearance, you're looking at a white Tacoma, right?
Yep.
Next one, please. Also on May 26th, another, this one a gold or tan colored one, right?
Correct.
Don't know if we have, oh. And then you looked at one that was at a dealership, right, on May 31st. You see that down at the bottom there?
Yes.
So even the day that the police were questioning you, you were still looking to replace your Tacoma, isn't that right?
Possible. I mean, if it's on my phone, I don't deny it.
Well, that whole month you were searching to replace your Tacoma, right?
Yes.
And you had told Mr. Dulos that you were seeking to replace your Tacoma, weren't you? Didn't you, I mean?
I did.
Generally, except for holidays, you did work Monday through Friday, is that right?
Correct.
And your routine was, if you were going to a job site, you would not take your own vehicle because of that it wasn't reliable, correct?
If it was not in Farmington area.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it was a local job, you might go right from home to the job site, right?
Correct.
And there were a lot of actually, right on Mountain Spring Road, there have been mention of other addresses. There were a lot of lots that Ford Group owned that they were marketing and planning on building houses on, right?
Correct.
In fact, you still live in that area, right?
Correct.
A lot of those houses have since been built, even after the death of Fotis Dulos, correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, even after, a lot of those houses that were for sale back then, or lots rather, houses have been built on them. So now it's all built up when it wasn't back then, right? 2019.
I don't disagree. I just don't have a recollection of seeing a lot prior and after being built a house.
I take it since all of this, certainly after you left Ford Group, you don't travel a lot on Eli Road or Deer Cliff Road?
I do.
You do, and you haven't noticed a lot of houses being built on the Eli Road side of that mountain,
Which side of the road are you talking?
coming towards Farmington?
So I'm just going to object on relevance grounds. Additionally, counsel's testifying at this point.
I'll withdraw the question. Let me just go back for a minute. You know, we talked about the power line trail, and I forgot to ask you this question. The power lines stay on the West Hartford side of that mountain, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's that, yeah.
And there are also regular hiking trails in the water company MDC property, aren't there?
No, not aware of this. I never go hiking then.
You've never noticed if there are, right?
Don't recall it, no.
You ever notice any blue squares on trees for people to hike through that area? So there's ways to cut across and
If
whatnot?
I was there on the dirt bike, I wouldn't pay attention to that.
Because you wouldn't go on those trails, right?
And also go fast,
A lot of trees down, logs, rocks, right?
yeah.
Okay. But you would often take a four-group vehicle home on the weekend rather than take your Tacoma, right?
Often,
Yeah, often, like many times.
on the weekend,
Yeah,
very rare.
rarely. But it wasn't unusual for you to do that, was it?
Very rare, I think it's what to say.
By the way, when you had mentioned the lawyer for Mr. Dulos calling you at one point, remember that testimony yesterday?
Which
Or
letter?
no?
Which letter?
Yesterday. Well, you couldn't remember his name. One of Mr. Dulos's lawyers called you back in May of 2019 or early June, didn't he?
I don't remember, no.
You don't remember? You didn't say this yesterday?
Well, counsel, you can use leading questions. It's cross.
All right. Didn't you testify yesterday that one of Mr. Dulos's called you and suggested that you might need your own lawyer because of your immigration status? Remember saying that yesterday?
I believe I said Dulos told me that.
Not one of his lawyers?
I don't recall it.
In any event, the police did say things to you made you concerned about your immigration status, didn't they?
I don't recall it, no.
You don't recall that? Don't you remember the police saying to you words to the effect of that if they wanted to really mess with your green card, they could just make a phone call?
Yes,
But they said, but that's not what they were looking to have happen,
I'm just
right?
going to object, Your Honor, calls for speculation as to what other people were looking to have happen.
No, this is what was said to the witness.
Well, if the representation is that the police later said after that, they are not looking for that to happen, then the court will allow it.
yes.
They did say that to you. Right. So, were you nervous about them bringing up your green card status?
Yes,
You weren't a U.S. citizen, were you?
no,
Are you now?
yes,
That's happened since 2019, correct?
correct.
If you had been arrested for anything, you knew you could have been deported, right?
Correct,
And you'd lived here for what, 20 years at that point? 19 years?
19 years.
And you were concerned, right?
Correct.
I'm going to ask you now about a trip that you took up to the Litchfield State Police Barracks on June 12th, 2019. Do you recall going there?
Yes,
You thought you were going to pick up your truck then, didn't you?
yes.
In fact, when did you pick up your truck, ever?
Did it?
You never got it back, right? Were you ever compensated for it? They just kept it, right?
Correct.
So you went up there on around June 12th to get it, thinking they were going to give it back to you, right?
That was my understanding, yes.
But in fact, you went up there with an oil can, didn't you?
Correct.
I'm going to show the witness. Oh, is it on? No. Got it. Exhibit Y. Yeah, you just put that. It's called Oil Can 2. We just look at the image that's up on the screen.
Yes,
All right. Now, do you recall being in the state police in an interrogation room on June 12, 2019?
yes,
And that's you sitting there with, I guess those are sunglasses on your forehead?
yes,
And the person in the foreground there with the large arms and the, I don't know if that's a hood or whatever it is behind his head there, that's one of the state police officers, right?
I believe so, yes.
And could you tell the jury, you see the date and the time, right? Was that the time you were there, 11:15 in the morning?
If the camera time is correct, yes.
Okay, and what is that in your left hand on the table that we see in this image?
It's oil can.
That was the oil can you brought, because if you were going to take your vehicle, it would have probably drained out unless you put in oil, right?
I was planning on being better safe than sorry, so I took some oil with me, yes.
You had to put in a lot of oil because you knew it had been dripping, right?
Yeah,
And they started questioning you, right? That day.
yes,
And they told you you weren't getting your truck back, correct?
correct.
And that's when you told them you wanted to have your attorney present for any further questioning, right?
Yeah,
And so they stopped the interview at that time, right? They stopped it
yes.
at your request.
I was trying to call my attorney and I couldn't get hold of him, so
Well, he didn't answer, or was it that this particular location in Litchfield had lousy cell service?
I don't remember. I remember I couldn't get hold of him.
Okay, and if you couldn't reach him, then you weren't going to talk to him, right?
Yes,
Okay. You'd already met with Attorney Urzo before that, right?
I don't remember when I met with him first time.
Your Honor, I'm going to, well, if this could be a place to stop, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The
Ladies
difference-
and gentlemen, we'll stand in our luncheon recess until 2 o'clock. Please do not discuss the case.